everybody! It's Glitter Informer, and welcome to the first day of school episode of Meitantei Pretty Cure! We have a very unique episode to talk about today. From the first 4 episodes, I thought I was getting a pretty good idea of how this season was going to be, but already, this early on, this episode turns the status quo onto its head in a total of 4 different ways. First of all, no, the video title is not clickbait. The girls really are fighting. Episodes 1 to 4 establish that these girls are thick as thieves. They were literally speaking in unison and finishing each other's sentences the day they met. It's like they were always meant to be together. But here, for the first time, they start disagreeing with one another and falling out of sync. What could have possibly happened to threaten such an astounding friendship? The answer is the number one enemy of every teenager: school. You see, over in Japan, the new school year starts after spring break, not after summer break like where I'm from. So this episode takes place on Mikuru's first day as a second year in junior high. And thus, rather than hanging out with her best buddy Anna all day, she has to go to school, leaving Anna all alone. And it turns out that even though Anna keeps a smile constantly plastered on her face and tries to hide all of her personal problems, deep down, she's actually kind of a jealous person. But wait, you ask. Shouldn't Anna be going to junior high as well? Well, wouldn't that be nice? Unfortunately, Anna's kinda sorta undocumented. You can't exactly have a birth certificate when you've time traveled back to before you were born. So no school for Anna. Poor girl's gonna be super behind on her studies by the time she gets back to 2027. Even if she returns to the exact moment she left, she'll still be like a year out of practice, and she'll have to work really hard to relearn everything she forgot during her trip to 1999. Naturally, Anna gets lonely at her de facto home, the Kyoto Detective Agency, all by herself. All she has is Jet Senpai, who's constantly holed up in his laboratory, and Pochitan, who isn't exactly a great conversationalist due to being a baby. So, noticing that it seems it's gonna rain soon, Anna decides to meet Mikuru at her school to bring her an umbrella. Before Anna leaves, Jet Senpai gives her a pair of tiny devices he made. They're the miniaturized forms of new pre-kit devices, and they're surprise tools that will help us later. What are they called? We don't know yet. Interestingly, Jet Senpai says they're legendary pre-kits from a book he read. So first of all, I guess each of his inventions is called a pre-kit? I thought the pre-kit was the entire set of inventions, but I guess not. Second of all, does Jet Senpai not come up with the ideas or blueprints for the devices himself? It seems he found out how to make these pre-kits from a dusty old tome. Maybe he comes from a long line of inventors. Well, enough about that. Anna heads off to Mikuru's school. But oh no! Mikuru has friends! Anna overhears Mikuru chatting it up with her 2 besties at school, who also happen to have cameos in the opening theme. We'll probably be seeing more of them later. On top of that, one of them has a spare umbrella to give to Mikuru in case it rains, so Anna's entire trip here was pointless. So Anna's all like, great, I guess Mikuru doesn't need me anymore because she has such good friends that she's way closer with than me and has known them way longer than me, and I came all this way out here for nothing. That's cool, I guess. She doesn't say it out loud or anything, but you can tell just from the look at her face that she's jealous as heck. And then Anna bumps into this lady who drops her photograph on the ground, and I'm gonna have to stop and rant for a bit. Remember how at the end of last episode's review I was talking about how glad I was that Anna was surprisingly good at keeping supernatural stuff under wraps, and how she wasn't as glaringly suspicious and bad at lying as every other Pretty Cure ever? Well, I am going to be taking all of that back. You see, when the woman Anna meets drops her photograph onto the ground and Anna picks it up, Pochitan says, "Pochi!" because that's pretty much all Pochitan could say. And the woman's kind of confused by this. So naturally, instead of being like, I wonder what that was. Anyways, or, oh, this here is one of them talking toys. Anna freaks the heck out and is like, watashi kono shashin ga hoshii. By the way, that's Japanese for I want that picture too. It's a pun, you see, because hoshi sounds kind of like pochi. This is one of them things that doesn't work in English so well. But yeah, Anna could not be acting more suspicious if she tried. Also, wasn't Anna supposed to never tell a lie? I guess we're just forgetting about that then. She doesn't even get conflicted over this or anything. Or maybe she really does want that picture after all and is just omitting information rather than actually straight up lying? I don't know, man. And yet, as per usual for the franchise, the woman doesn't react at all to Anna being more sus than an imposter in Among Us. She's just like, oh, thank you for complimenting my picture, and moves right along. I love it when instead of having the girls come up with clever solutions to avoid suspicion, the show just makes all the other characters dumber than dog water, so they don't even have to try to hide anything supernatural. Well, whatever. Turns out this woman needs some help. See, her sister Keiko's supposed to be studying abroad in London, but lately tons of people have been seeing her around all over the place here in Japan. Even the woman herself has seen her sister, but she disappeared before she could go and ask her what the heck she's doing out of England. She tried giving Keiko a phone call, but Keiko didn't pick up. So, what's the deal with Keiko? Luckily for this lady, Anna's always eager to lend a helping hand. Even without Mikuru there to sign on, Anna pulls out her pre-kit book, turns it from its miniature form to its usable form right in front of the woman, and uses it as a badge of sorts to prove she's a detective and will take on the woman's case. So, by the rules of this universe, a miniature bear that says Pochi is a big secret, but a tiny book floating into the air, being engulfed by a sphere of light and turning into a normal book is perfectly fine to be shown to the public. It isn't even like this sort of thing is a normal occurrence for people outside the agency. Every time somebody sees a new pre-kit get unminiaturized like this, they're always shocked. If they could just say, yeah, this pre-kit thing is just modern technology and move on without anyone getting suspicious, why can't they just say, yeah, this fairy thing is also just modern technology? Boys these days, am I right? But Anna isn't the only one sniffing out a case. Mikuru has a mystery of her own to solve. She briefly meets with the student council president, who also has a cameo in the opening theme, but she's barely there and nobody really cares about her. What really matters is the lady who actually runs the school. She wants Mikuru to investigate the school-wide rumors of a spooky ghost that's been haunting the school. Here's the problem. Mikuru's terrified of ghosts. I really like this trait in anime characters because they always make such silly faces when they get scared, and Mikuru is no slouch in this department. So Mikuru uses the pre-kit voice memo thing that they got in episode 2. Remember that device that they used to call one another when the phone lines were down? That's that. It's super confusing because when they were originally introduced, Jet Senpai said they were called pre-kits and had a voice memo feature, but now they're being called pre-kit voice memos to differentiate them from the other pre-kits. My brain is melting. But alas! Even though Mikuru calls Anna for help, Anna doesn't pick up. In fact, Anna hangs up on Mikuru in her time of need. Why would she do such a terrible thing? It's because Anna is busy infiltrating the nearby high school to search for Keiko, who is a student there. And as it turns out, cell phones are banned at the high school. Granted, the pre-kit voice memo isn't actually a cell phone, as clearly shown in episode 2, but I doubt the school administrators would care about the difference, so Anna has to silence the voice memo in order to not get caught. Speaking of not getting caught, Anna pulls out yet another pre-kit device thingy, the pre-kit lip, which is a thing of lipstick that temporarily disguises her as a high school version of herself. It's really cool seeing an older version of Anna. She looks so mature and her hairstyle is changed up too. I also think it's interesting that the heroes can potentially disguise themselves just like the villains can. They're probably both using similar technology. So okay, Anna's searching for Keiko and Mikuru's searching for a ghost. So you might think that the second way episode 5 is different from the other episodes is that there are 2 mysteries instead of 1, right? Quite contrary, my dear viewers. The truth is, there are 0 mysteries in this episode, which is kinda disappointing. Wait, really? You might ask. Aren't they trying to figure out the thing with Keiko and the other thing with the ghost? Well, yeah, they are, but it's made very obvious to the viewer from the beginning what's really going on. See, the third way episode 5 switches things up is that this here is Niji's last chance to prove himself to Uso Noir. It's typical in a Pretty Cure season for the bad guy's leader to get fed up with one of his subordinates failing over and over and say, "Alright buddy, one more failure and you've got hell to pay." But it usually doesn't happen this early on. Niji's failed twice so far. If Noir gets rid of his followers this quickly, he's gonna run out of Phantom Thieves before the season's even halfway over. Anyways, back to the second part about there being zero mysteries. It would be pretty weird for Keiko to travel halfway around the world back to Japan without telling any of her friends and family, so the Keiko that everyone's seeing is probably a disguised Phantom Thief. As for the mysterious apparition who's spawning all the ghost stories, probably also that Phantom Thief. They're very good at disappearing suddenly. We later actually see Keiko ourselves, and she briefly gets 4-pointed stars in her eyes as her face goes dark. All of the Phantom Thieves, except for Luluka and Mashutan, who are special cases, have 4-pointed stars in their eyes. The show could hardly be telegraphing any harder that this ain't really Keiko. And given that Niji is the villain with by far the most focus in this episode, it would be a surprise reveal for Keiko to not be Niji in disguise. I don't even believe the show expects us to be surprised at the eventual reveal. This is the first episode of Meitantei Pretty Cure to not have a Jimmy Neutron aha brain blast moment as the girls figure out the culprit. Heck, the girls never figure out the culprit at all. Niji just straight up reveals himself to them. But before we get into the big confrontation between the heroes and Niji, we need to discuss the big confrontation between Anna and Mikuru. The two bump into each other because Mikuru's junior high school and Keiko's high school are right next to one another, and they get angry and start yelling at each other. Mikuru's upset that Anna took on a case by herself without telling her, and Anna, who's still jealous about Mikuru's other friends, gets mad at Mikuru because Mikuru herself took on a case without telling Anna. And Mikuru's like, "I tried to tell you, but you hung up on me." And then Anna says, "I was kind of busy investigating," and then Mikuru just runs off without explaining to Anna why. Turns out, Mikuru saw a mysterious person and for some reason or another assumed she had something to do with the school's ghost problem. I mean, yeah, the ghost stories said the ghost took the form of a girl, but the entire school is made up of just girls. Maybe this one girl was suspicious because she was standing all alone? Well, turns out Mikuru's suspicions are correct because it is in fact the fake Keiko. After Keiko and Mikuru are done talking, Pochitan senses that a burglary is about to happen, so she drags Anna on over. And then yeah, Niji reveals himself before the girls figure out that it's him in disguise. Why isn't he bothering with the phantom part of being a phantom thief? Well, when Mikuru was talking to him, she said something about swallows flying low when it's about to rain. And the thing he's after today? It's a giant statue of 2 swallows, which is the symbol of the school. While in disguise, Niji was puzzling over how to steal such a gigantic treasure, but Mikuru's comment made him realize he could just turn the statue into a Haninda and instruct the Haninda to fly away. And he proceeds to do just that. But it's not enough for him to just steal the item. Uso Noir wants him to defeat the Cures first. But before the girls transform to fight him and his giant monster off, they get in a shouting match. Mikuru's ticked off that Anna didn't tell her about the Keiko case sooner because then they would have solved it a lot quicker, and Anna's like, "I would have, but you just ran off." And they get so angry that their Aho gays start arguing with each other, and it's really cute. But then they transform, and during the transformation sequence, they're just as happy and smiley and friendly as ever with one another. Then they finish transforming, and they're right back to arguing. What's more, the fact that they're totally out of sync makes them really bad at fighting. For instance, they bump into each other when they're trying to dodge one of the attacks. To make matters worse, since the statue absorbed 2 swallows, Niji actually summons 2 Hanindas from it, not just one. And these Hanindas are a perfect example of teamwork. They make absolute mincemeat of the girls. Even when they do the "this is our answer" finisher attack, the giant monsters completely no-sell it. All seems lost, but then Cure Answer remembers that, wait a minute, there's a surprise tool that can help us right now! Jet Senpai gave them these 2 device thingies, right? One of them for her, one of them for Cure Mystique. So, you think Answer would give one of them over to Mystique and they'd use them together, right? But nope. Answer tries to unminiaturize the new device over and over by herself, but no matter how much she tells it, "Open! Open!" it never does anything useful. And yeah, here's where we get to the fourth, final, and biggest reason episode 5 is not like the others. Pretty Cures lose. One of the Hanyudas goes in for the kill, and there's literally nothing the girls can do to save themselves. The only reason they don't get kicked from the server right then and there is because Pochitan steps in and uses all of their power to laser beam the Hanyuda, severely wounding it. It's not enough to finish off either Hanyuda, but at this point, Michi knows there's no way he can stand up to that sort of power without losing the Makoto jewel he's gonna steal. So, he and the Hanyudas pack their things and skedaddle on out. For the first time in the entire series, a phantom thief has gotten away with their crime. To make matters even worse, Pochitan used so much of their limited magical power in that moment that they're now in critical condition. They collapse and are barely conscious, and it's all Answer and Mystique's fault for being unable to do their duty to fight the villains off. A literal baby was able to do their job better than they could. And as the girls realize the sheer weight of their collective failure, it finally rains. And then the ending theme comes on and everyone's all happy and dancing around. Yay! Okay, in all seriousness, wow, this show is raising the stakes really early on. Usually this sort of thing doesn't happen until at least a quarter of the way into the series when the Cures get their first power-up. In fact, it's typical for it not to happen until the halfway point, which is usually around the time that a whole new Cure joins the team. I'm really excited that the show is finally starting to show some of Anna's character flaws, especially that she's kind of jelly. And I can't wait to see how the Cures are going to tackle this situation and come to terms with their many, many issues. If we're going this crazy in episode 5, I can only imagine how intense things are going to get as the series goes on even further. At least, I hope things will get more intense. I'm kind of worried that the show is going to max out its stakes really early on, and then it won't be able to continuously ratchet things up in the later episodes because of it. But we'll have to wait and see. For now, other than that one bit with Anna being very bad at hiding Pochitan's existence, I really like this episode, and I get more and more hyped about this season of Pretty Cure every single week. And so the curtain falls, until the next episode. Bye-bye!